Right now, as you're watching this, you're carrying anxiety that doesn't even belong to you. You inherited it from your parents, absorbed it from your friends, and downloaded it from social media. The racing thoughts keeping you awake at night, half of them aren't even your own thoughts. That constant worry about what others think, you learned that from someone else's playbook. Here's what nobody tells you about anxiety. Most of it is secondhand smoke from other people's fears. And you've been breathing it in so long you think it's oxygen. Your grandmother's unspoken worries about money became your financial anxiety. Your parents' relationship stress became your fear of commitment. Your coworkers' panic about deadlines became your Sunday scaries. We're walking around carrying emotional baggage that was never ours to begin with, like wearing someone else's clothes that don't fit. But here's the thing that changes everything. Once you realize which anxieties are borrowed, you can finally return them to sender. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to identify what's yours versus what you picked up along the way. And more importantly, how to put down what was never meant for you to carry. There's something happening in your mind right now that you've never noticed before. Every time you worry about money, you sound exactly like your father. When you panic about being late, you're channeling your mother's voice. The way you stress about what people think mirrors your older sister's insecurities perfectly. You think these are your original thoughts, but they're actually emotional hand-me-downs that have been passed down through generations like family recipes nobody wants to cook. Most people spend their entire lives fighting battles that were never theirs to fight. They're solving problems that belong to their grandparents, carrying fears that made sense in 1952 but have no place in 2025. Your anxiety isn't a character flaw or a chemical imbalance. It's an inheritance you never knew you received. Here's what's wild about inherited anxiety. It doesn't just copy the worry, it copies the exact style of worrying. Your mom obsesses over details the same way her mother did. Your dad catastrophizes about finances, using the same mental patterns his father used during the Great Depression. You've inherited not just the fear, but the entire operating system that runs the fear. The crazy part is how perfectly it disguises itself as your own thinking. You genuinely believe that obsessing over, but you assume that's just how the world looks. You've been seeing your life through the emotional prescription of people who live completely different lives, faced different challenges, and had different resources than you do now. But here's the breakthrough moment that changes everything. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you recognize which anxieties aren't originally yours, they lose their power over you. It's like realizing you've been afraid of a shadow on the wall that turns out to be just a coat hanging on a hook. The first step to freedom is mapping your anxiety inheritance. Take your 3 biggest worries right now, the ones that keep you up at night, make your stomach churn, or cause you to overthink every decision. Now trace each one back to specific people in your life. Not just any people, but the ones whose emotional patterns you absorbed growing up. This is technique number 1 out of 8 that will completely transform your relationship with anxiety. It's called the Anxiety Inheritance Test, and it works by creating what I call an anxiety family tree. You're going to map each of your major worries to the person who first modeled that worry for you. Most people discover that their financial anxiety comes from one parent, their relationship fears from another, and their perfectionism from a grandparent they barely remember. The relief of realizing these aren't your authentic concerns is immediate and life-changing. When you complete this mapping exercise, something incredible happens. The borrowed anxieties start feeling foreign in your mind, like wearing clothes that obviously belong to someone else. They become easier to question, easier to challenge, and eventually easier to return to their original owners. Your authentic anxieties, the ones that actually belong to you, become clearer and more manageable. They're usually connected to your real values, your actual goals, and your genuine concerns about your present-day life. These are the only anxieties worth your time and energy. Part 2. The 48-hour social media detox. Mirror. Something strange is about to happen to your anxiety levels, and you're not going to believe how fast it works. There's a simple experiment that reveals exactly which of your worries are actually yours and which ones you're borrowing from the collective panic of millions of strangers online. But most people are too addicted to their digital anxiety suppliers to ever try it. Every single day, you're mainlining other people's fears directly into your nervous system. You wake up and immediately check your phone, downloading the day's fresh batch of catastrophic thinking from people you've never met. Their political panic becomes your political panic. Their relationship drama becomes your relationship insecurity. Their career anxiety becomes your Sunday scaries. Social media isn't just showing you content, it's programming your emotional state. The algorithm feeds you a constant stream of what to be afraid of, what to worry about, and what to feel anxious over. You think you're just scrolling, but you're actually absorbing the collective nervous breakdown of humanity, one post at a time. Here's what's happening in your brain that you don't realize. Every worried post you read, every anxiety-inducing news story you consume, every stressed-out comment you witness is creating neural pathways in your mind. Your brain starts to think these external fears belong to you. It can't tell the difference between a real threat in your actual life and a hypothetical worry from someone living 3,000 miles away. The borrowed anxieties from social media are particularly sneaky because they feel so immediate and urgent. When someone posts about their job loss, your brain starts worrying about your job security. When you see relationship problems in your feed, your mind starts analyzing your own relationship for red flags that don't exist. You're living in a state of borrowed emergency from people whose lives have nothing to do with yours. But here's the thing that will blow your mind. These digitally borrowed anxieties disappear almost instantly when you remove the source. They're like houseplants that die the moment you stop watering them. Your organic anxieties, the ones that actually belong to you, stick around but become surprisingly manageable when they're not amplified by the digital noise. This brings us to technique number 2 out of 8 for reclaiming your mental peace. It's called the 48-hour social media detox mirror, and it works by creating a clean comparison between your natural anxiety levels and your digitally inflated ones. Here's exactly how it works. For the next 48 hours, you're going completely offline. No social media, no news apps, no endless scrolling through other people's problems. During these 48 hours, you're going to keep a simple log of which anxious thoughts pop up and how intense they feel. What happens during this detox is remarkable. The borrowed digital anxieties start fading within the first 12 hours. Those vague worries about global events, political outcomes, and social trends that normally consume your mental energy simply evaporate. Your mind stops carrying the emotional weight of strangers' problems. By hour 24, you'll notice your anxiety feels different. It's more focused, more specific to your actual life circumstances. The constant background hum of borrowed worry gets quieter and quieter until you can finally hear your own thoughts clearly. By hour 48, you'll have a crystal clear picture of which anxieties are authentically yours versus which ones were being fed to you through your screen. Your real concerns become obvious. They're the ones that persist, even without digital reinforcement. These are usually about your actual relationships, your real responsibilities, and your genuine goals. The contrast is so stark that most people can't believe how much mental energy they were wasting on borrowed digital anxiety. They realize they've been carrying the emotional burdens of millions of people they'll never meet, worrying about problems they can't solve, in places they'll never visit. When you return to social media after this experiment, you'll see it completely differently. You'll recognize the anxiety merchants trying to sell you their fears. You'll spot the borrowed worry before it has a chance to move into your mind and make itself at home. Part 3. The Emotional Return Policy Method. Right now, you're storing emotional inventory that doesn't belong to you. And unlike a regular store, you never put up a return by date. Your mind has become a warehouse for other people's unprocessed fears, unresolved traumas, and recycled worries. But here's what nobody taught you. You can actually return emotional products that were never meant for you in the first place. Think about how retail returns work. You realize something doesn't fit, doesn't work, or just isn't right for you, so you take it back to where it came from. The same principle applies to borrowed anxiety, except instead of returning a sweater, you're returning decades of inherited worry that's been taking up space in your mental closet. Your mother's fear of financial ruin doesn't need to live in your bank account anxiety. Your father's anger about feeling unappreciated doesn't need to show up in your workplace relationships. Your friend's relationship trauma doesn't need to become your dating insecurity. These emotional items were never purchased by you, never chosen by you, and definitely don't fit your actual life. The problem is that borrowed emotions feel so natural after a while that you forget they came from somewhere else. You've been wearing your grandmother's worry about being judged so long that it feels like your own skin. You've been carrying your siblings' perfectionism so long that you think it's your personal standard. But just because you've had something for years doesn't mean it belongs to you. Here's what's beautiful about understanding emotional ownership. Once you realize that most of your anxiety came from other people's unfinished emotional business, you can consciously choose to give it back. You don't have to solve your parents' money fears. You don't have to heal your friends' trust issues. You don't have to manage your family's generational trauma. That work belongs to them, not you. But how do you actually return something as intangible as borrowed anxiety? How do you give back a worry that's been living in your head for so long it feels like permanent furniture? This is where technique number 3 out of 8 becomes a game changer. It's called the emotional return policy method, and it works by making the invisible process of returning borrowed anxiety completely tangible and real. You're going to practice literally giving back what was never yours to carry. Here's the first way to do this. Visualization returns. Close your eyes and picture the person whose anxiety you've been carrying. See them clearly in your mind. Now imagine handing back their specific worry like you're returning a borrowed book. Tell them in your mind that you're giving back their financial fears, their relationship anxiety, or their perfectionist stress. Picture them taking it from you and walking away with what belongs to them. The second method is even more powerful. Letter returns. Write actual letters to the people whose emotional baggage you've been carrying, but never send them. Pour out everything you'd been holding for them. Explain how their unprocessed anxiety became your daily stress. Tell their financial fears to go back to them. Tell their relationship drama to stay in their life, not yours. The act of writing makes the return feel real and complete. What happens during these return processes is immediate and profound. The borrowed anxiety starts feeling foreign and uncomfortable, like wearing someone else's underwear. Your mind begins to reject what doesn't authentically belong to you. The mental space that was occupied by other people's problems suddenly becomes available for your own thoughts, dreams, and actual concerns. Most people discover that when they return borrowed anxiety, they have way more mental energy than they realized. They've been running emotional software that wasn't designed for their operating system, and returning it frees up processing power they forgot they had. The relief is instant, because you're finally being authentic to your actual emotional experience, instead of living out someone else's unfinished emotional story. Part 4. The Energy Vampire Audit. There are people in your life who are secretly draining your emotional battery every single day, and you've been blaming yourself for feeling exhausted. You think you're just naturally anxious, naturally drained, naturally overwhelmed. But the truth is, you're being energetically pickpocketed by people who consistently dump their emotional chaos into your nervous system and walk away feeling better while you feel worse. These aren't necessarily bad people. They might be family members you love, friends you care about, or co-workers you respect. But they have one thing in common. They consistently leave you feeling more anxious, more drained, and more overwhelmed after every interaction. They're emotional vampires, and your anxiety is their favorite blood type. Here's how the energy transfer works without you realizing it. They start conversations by immediately dumping their problems, fears, and stress onto you. They talk at you, not with you. They vent their frustrations, and somehow you end up absorbing their emotional state. You listen, you empathize, you try to help, and by the end of the conversation, they feel lighter while you feel heavier. You think you're being a good friend, a supportive family member, or a helpful colleague. But what's actually happening is emotional labor theft. They're outsourcing their anxiety management to you. They're using your nervous system as their personal emotional processing center. They dump their stress and walk away refreshed, while you're left holding their emotional baggage. The insidious part is how normal this becomes. You start to think that feeling drained after certain interactions is just part of having relationships. You assume that anxiety spikes after talking to specific people is just your personal sensitivity. But it's not sensitivity, it's absorption. You're soaking up their unprocessed emotions like a sponge. These energy vampires have trained you to be their emotional dumping ground. They know exactly who to call when they need to offload their anxiety. They've figured out that you'll listen, absorb, and carry their problems long after the conversation ends. You become their unpaid therapist, their emotional storage unit, their anxiety relief system. But here's what changes everything. Once you identify who these people are, you can stop being their emotional punching bag. You can reclaim your energy, protect your peace, and break free from relationships that consistently make your anxiety worse. This is technique number 4 out of 8 for stopping borrowed anxiety at its source. It's called the Energy Vampire Audit, and it works by identifying exactly who in your life is consistently supplying you with anxiety that doesn't belong to you. Here's how to conduct your audit. For the next week, you're going to track your emotional state before and after every significant interaction. Keep a simple log on your phone. Before you talk to someone, rate your anxiety level from 1 to 10. After the conversation, rate it again. The pattern will shock you. You'll discover that certain people consistently raise your anxiety levels. They're your anxiety suppliers. They might be family members who always have a crisis, friends who only call when they need emotional support, or co-workers who constantly complain but never want solutions. These are the people who are feeding your anxiety habit without you realizing it. The audit reveals something most people never notice. Your anxiety isn't random, it's highly correlated with specific people. You feel great until you talk to certain individuals, and then suddenly you're worried about things that weren't even on your radar 5 minutes earlier. Once you identify your top 3 anxiety suppliers, you have a choice. You can continue being their emotional dumping ground, or you can start protecting your energy. You can set boundaries, limit exposure, or change how you interact with them. Most people are amazed to discover that their anxiety levels drop dramatically when they stop spending time with their energy vampires. Problems that seemed massive suddenly become manageable. Worries that felt overwhelming suddenly seem solvable. Part 5. The Reverse Psychology Protection Shield. Every day, people are trying to make their emotional problems your emotional problems, and you keep saying yes to deliveries you never ordered. Someone walks into your space stressed, and within minutes, you're stressed. Someone sits next to you anxious, and suddenly you're anxious. Someone calls you panicked, and you hang up carrying their panic. You've become an emotional sponge, absorbing whatever energy people bring to you. But nobody taught you how to wring yourself out. This isn't kindness or empathy, it's emotional hijacking. People are using your nervous system as their personal anxiety relief center. They feel better by making you feel worse. They solve their emotional problems by creating emotional problems for you. It's like someone walking into your house, dropping their garbage on your floor and leaving while you clean up the mess. The crazy part is how automatic this process has become. You don't consciously choose to absorb other people's emotional states. It just happens. Someone mentions their work stress and suddenly you're thinking about your own job security. Someone shares their relationship problems and suddenly you're analyzing your own relationship for issues that don't exist. You're emotionally contagious to everyone else's problems. But here's what most people don't understand about emotional energy. It follows the same rules as physical energy. It can be redirected, reflected, and bounced back to where it came from. You don't have to be a human emotion-absorbing machine. You can become an emotion-reflecting surface that sends people's anxiety back to them while protecting your own peace. This is about becoming emotionally non-absorbent. Instead of soaking up whatever emotional state people bring to you, you learn to let it bounce off and return to sender. It's like coating yourself in emotional Teflon. Nothing sticks that doesn't belong to you. Think about how a mirror works. Light hits it and reflects back to the source. It doesn't absorb the light, store the light, or become the light. It simply returns what came to it. This is exactly how you can handle other people's emotional energy. Receive it, recognize it, and reflect it back without making it yours. The beautiful thing about emotional reflection is that it actually helps the other person more than absorption does. When you absorb their anxiety, you enable them to avoid dealing with their own emotional work. When you reflect it back to them, you're essentially saying, "This belongs to you, and you're capable of handling it." You're empowering them instead of enabling them. This brings us to technique number 5 out of 8 for protecting yourself from borrowed anxiety. It's called the reverse psychology protection shield, and it works by turning you from an emotional absorber into an emotional reflector. Here's how to install your protection shield. The moment someone starts dumping their emotional energy on you, mentally picture a mirror between you and them. See their anxiety, stress, or panic hitting this mirror and bouncing back to them. Don't fight their emotions. Don't fix their emotions. Don't absorb their emotions. Just let them bounce back, like light off a reflective surface. You can do this while still being compassionate and supportive. The mirror isn't cold or cruel. It's protective and empowering. You can listen to someone's problems without making their problems your problems. You can care about their situation without carrying their emotional load. You can be present for them without becoming them. The practical application is simple but powerful. When someone shares their anxiety with you, instead of thinking, "Oh no, what if that happens to me too?" you think, "That sounds really difficult for them to handle." Instead of absorbing their worry, you acknowledge their worry and mentally hand it back to them. Most people notice an immediate difference in their energy levels when they start using this shield. They can be around stressed people without becoming stressed. They can listen to anxious people without becoming anxious. They can support others without sacrificing their own emotional well-being. Part 6. The original anxiety archaeology. Buried underneath layers of borrowed worry, inherited fear, and adopted anxiety is your authentic emotional blueprint, the real you, with real concerns about your actual life. But finding it requires becoming an emotional archaeologist, carefully excavating through decades of other people's unprocessed feelings to discover what genuinely belongs to you. Most people never dig this deep, so they spend their entire lives managing anxiety that was never theirs in the first place. Your authentic anxiety is completely different from borrowed anxiety. It connects directly to your personal values, your individual goals, and your unique life circumstances. It makes sense for who you are, where you are, and what you're actually trying to accomplish. Borrowed anxiety feels foreign and overwhelming because it's designed for someone else's life, someone else's challenges, someone else's time period. Think about the difference between wearing clothes tailored specifically for your body versus wearing random clothes from a thrift store. Your authentic anxiety fits your life perfectly. It motivates you, protects you, and guides you toward better decisions. Borrowed anxiety is like trying to function in clothes that are too big, too small, or completely wrong for your lifestyle. Here's what authentic anxiety actually does for you. It warns you about real threats to things you actually care about. It motivates you to prepare for challenges you're genuinely facing. It helps you make better decisions about situations you're actually in. It's your internal guidance system, designed specifically for your unique circumstances. Borrowed anxiety does the opposite. It makes you worry about threats that don't exist in your life. It motivates you to solve problems you'll never face. It guides you away from opportunities that would actually benefit you. It's like having a GPS programmed for someone else's destination. It will never get you where you need to go. The archaeological dig to find your authentic anxiety requires separating what's genuinely yours from what you inherited, absorbed, or adopted from others. It means tracing each worry back to its origin and asking, does this actually make sense for my life? Or am I carrying someone else's fear? Your authentic anxieties usually fall into specific categories: career concerns that connect to your actual professional goals, relationship worries that relate to your real values around love and connection, health fears that make sense given your actual medical history and lifestyle, financial concerns that match your genuine responsibilities and aspirations. Borrowed anxieties feel random and disconnected from your real life. You're worried about problems you've never experienced, in situations you're not in, affecting goals you don't actually have. They're emotional hand-me-downs that don't fit your circumstances, your personality, or your genuine concerns. This is technique number 6 out of 8 for reclaiming your emotional authenticity. It's called original anxiety archaeology, and it works by systematically separating your genuine concerns from the inherited emotional artifacts you've been carrying. Here's how to conduct your archaeological dig. Take your current list of biggest worries and trace each one back to its origin. Ask yourself these specific questions. Does this worry connect to my actual values or someone else's? Does this fear protect something I genuinely care about or something I think I should care about? Does this anxiety motivate me toward my real goals or away from them? The authentic anxieties will have clear, logical connections to your actual life circumstances. They'll make sense when you examine them. They'll feel productive rather than paralyzing. They'll motivate constructive action rather than endless rumination. The borrowed anxieties will feel foreign under examination. They'll connect to other people's values, other people's goals, other people's life stages. They'll feel overwhelming because they were never designed for your nervous system to process. Most people are shocked to discover how few anxieties actually belong to them. They've been carrying emotional inventory from parents, friends, media, and culture that has nothing to do with their authentic concerns. When they clear out the borrowed anxiety, they find their real worries are manageable, logical, and actually helpful for navigating their genuine life challenges. Part 7. The Emotional Firewall Installation. Your mind is like a computer with no security software, accepting every emotional download from everyone around you without scanning for viruses first. People are constantly trying to install their anxiety, stress, and worry into your mental operating system, and you keep clicking yes to installations you never requested. But just like your computer needs protection from malicious downloads, your mind needs protection from emotional malware that slows down your entire system. Every day you're exposed to hundreds of opportunities to download other people's emotional problems. The stressed coworker who complains about their workload during lunch. The anxious friend who texts you their relationship drama at midnight. The family member who calls to dump their financial fears during your peaceful evening. Each interaction is an attempt to install their emotional software onto your mental hardware. Without proper protection, your mind becomes cluttered with programs you never chose to run. You wake up worried about your friend's job security. You go to sleep stressed about your parents' health concerns. You spend your mental processing power on problems that belong to other people, while your own important decisions get delayed and neglected. This emotional contamination happens so gradually that you don't notice the performance issues until your entire mental system is running slowly. You think you're naturally anxious, naturally overwhelmed, naturally scattered. But the truth is, you're trying to run too many emotional programs at once, most of which were installed without your conscious permission. The solution isn't to isolate yourself from everyone or become cold and uncaring. The solution is to install emotional security software that automatically scans incoming feelings and blocks the ones that don't belong in your system. You need a firewall that protects your mental space while still allowing genuine connection and authentic empathy. Here's how emotional firewalls work. They create a buffer between other people's emotional states and your internal experience. They allow you to witness someone else's anxiety without hosting it. They let you understand someone's stress without storing it. They enable you to support others without sacrificing your own emotional stability. Think of it like having a reception area in your mind. where emotional visitors have to check in before accessing your main mental space. Your firewall acts like a security guard, determining which emotional experiences get clearance to enter your system and which ones need to be redirected back to their owner. This brings us to technique number 7 out of 8 for protecting your mental peace. It's called emotional firewall installation, and it works by creating specific daily practices that prevent new, borrowed anxiety from infiltrating your system. The installation happens in 2 phases: morning protection setup and evening security scan. Every morning, before you interact with anyone, you're going to set your emotional intentions. You'll consciously decide which emotional downloads you're willing to accept today and which ones you'll redirect back to sender. Your morning setup looks like this. Today, I'm open to genuine connection and authentic empathy. I'm available to support others without absorbing their problems. I will witness their emotions without hosting their emotions. I choose to keep my mental space clear for my own thoughts, goals, and concerns. The evening security scan is equally important. Before you go to sleep, you review what emotional downloads attempted to install themselves during the day. You consciously delete anything that doesn't belong to you. You clear your mental cache of other people's worries, stress, and anxiety. Your evening scan sounds like this. What emotions did I pick up today that aren't mine? What worries am I carrying that belong to someone else? What anxiety can I return to its rightful owner before I sleep? The firewall works by making you conscious of the emotional installation process. Instead of automatically accepting every feeling that comes your way, you start actively choosing which emotions deserve space in your system. You become the administrator of your own emotional operating system, instead of letting everyone else install whatever they want. Most people notice immediate improvements in their mental clarity and emotional stability once their firewall is active. They can be around stressed people without becoming stressed. They can support anxious friends without becoming anxious. Part 8. The generational pattern breaker. Right now, you have a choice that will affect not just your own anxiety levels, but the emotional inheritance you pass down to everyone who comes after you. You can continue the generational tradition of handing down unprocessed fears, inherited worries, and recycled anxiety patterns. Or you can become the family member who finally breaks the chain. You can be the person who stops the emotional bucket brigade that's been passing trauma from one generation to the next for decades. Think about your family's anxiety patterns like a genetic condition that's been passed down through emotional DNA rather than biological DNA. Your great-grandmother's fear of poverty became your grandmother's financial anxiety, which became your parents' money stress, which became your own financial worries. Each generation inherited the emotional problems of the previous generation without realizing they had a choice in the matter. But here's what's revolutionary about understanding inherited anxiety patterns. Once you see them clearly, you can consciously choose to break them. You can be the generation that says, "This emotional pattern stops with me. I will not pass on what was passed to me. I will process what previous generations couldn't process, heal what they couldn't heal, and resolve what they couldn't resolve." The pattern breaking isn't just about stopping negative emotional inheritance. It's about starting positive emotional legacy. Instead of passing down anxiety, you can pass down emotional intelligence. Instead of handing down trauma, you can hand down healing. Instead of perpetuating worry patterns, you can model emotional resilience. Every time you choose not to dump your stress on someone else, you're breaking a generational pattern. Every time you process your own emotions instead of making them someone else's problem, you're stopping the anxiety chain reaction. Every time you refuse to pass on borrowed worry to the next generation, you're becoming an emotional pattern breaker. This isn't just about your own children or family members. This is about every person in your sphere of influence. your friends, your coworkers, your community members. Every interaction is an opportunity to either continue the cycle of borrowed anxiety or break it by modeling emotional ownership and authentic processing. The beautiful thing about becoming a pattern breaker is how it transforms not just your own emotional experience, but the emotional experience of everyone around you. People start feeling calmer in your presence. They stop using you as their emotional dumping ground. They begin processing their own feelings instead of outsourcing them to you. This is technique number 8 out of 8 for transforming your relationship with anxiety. It's called the generational pattern breaker, and it works by consciously choosing to stop emotional patterns that have been running in your family or social circle for generations. Here's how you become a pattern breaker. First, identify the specific anxiety patterns you inherited. What fears were passed down to you? What worry styles did you learn? What emotional reactions did you absorb from previous generations? Get clear on exactly what patterns you're working with. Second, make a conscious decision to not pass these patterns forward. Commit to processing your own emotions instead of making them someone else's problem. Choose to resolve your own anxiety instead of dumping it on others. Decide to heal what was handed down to you instead of handing it down again. Third, model a different way of handling emotional challenges for everyone in your life. Show people what it looks like to own your anxiety instead of sharing it. Demonstrate how to process stress without making it contagious. Exemplify emotional responsibility and authentic processing. The impact of pattern breaking extends far beyond your immediate circle. When you break generational anxiety patterns, you create ripple effects that influence families, communities, and social systems for generations to come. You become part of the solution to collective anxiety instead of part of the problem. Most people discover that breaking generational patterns isn't just helpful for others. It's profoundly healing for themselves. They finally feel free from emotional obligations that were never theirs to carry. You now have 8 powerful techniques to reclaim your mental peace from the borrowed anxiety that's been weighing you down for years. You've learned to identify which worries are actually yours through the anxiety inheritance test. You've discovered how to separate digital anxiety from authentic concerns with the social media detox mirror. You know how to literally return emotional baggage that doesn't belong to you using the emotional return policy method. You can now spot the energy vampires who drain your peace with the energy vampire audit. You have the tools to protect yourself from absorbing other people's stress through the reverse psychology protection shield. You can excavate your authentic concerns from inherited fears using original anxiety archaeology. You've installed an emotional firewall to prevent future contamination, and you're ready to break generational patterns that have run in your family for decades. But here's the most important thing to remember. This isn't just about reducing your anxiety levels. This is about reclaiming your authentic self from decades of emotional conditioning. When you stop carrying other people's fears, you finally have space for your own dreams. When you quit managing inherited worry, you can focus on your genuine goals. When you return borrowed anxiety to its rightful owners, you discover who you really are underneath all that emotional baggage. The person you become when you're not weighed down by anxiety that was never yours is someone you've probably never met before. That person is confident, clear-minded, and capable of handling their authentic concerns with grace and wisdom. That person has been waiting for you to clear out the borrowed worry so they could finally emerge. Today is the day you meet them.